In the United States during the 1800s, there was a lot of expansion westward. Companies were starting to become larger and needed to transport multiple things, but horses and donkeys were too slow. So they needed trains to transport people and things across the country. These trips were not fast. At 25 miles per hour, it took a long time to go across the country. Before George M. Pullman invented the Pullman cars, which were to hold and sleep people, trains were not very comfortable and difficult to rest in. George M. Pullman was very genius. He decided to build a train car that was luxurious, so people could rest during trips around the country. But when George M. Pullman decided to cut the workers' wages by 25%, the workers started to walk off the job. Eugene Victor Debs is a socialist candidate for the President of the United States and the most influential American Railway Union leader.
You're probably wondering what a Pullman is. A Pullman is a railway car that is affording special comfort and very comfortable sleeping berths. In 1867, George M. Pullman started the Pullman Palace Car Company. He wanted a very fancy and comfortable way of transporting people across the country. His company made cars for people. There was sleeping, sitting, and dining, which were all very comfortable and pleasing to the eye. These cars were very popular because all the other trains weren't comfortable. The company ran smoothly for about 27 years, but in 1894, when George M. Pullman lowered the workers' wages 25%, the workers started to leave the job. Every day, more and more workers left the company because they couldn't pay for their rent and family. In response to financial reverse related to the economic depression that started in 1893, the Pullman Palace Car Company cut the already low wages of its workers, but didn't introduce lower rent and other charges at Pullman. As a result, many workers and their families faced starvation. When workers tried to talk to George M. Pullman about their low wages, poor living conditions, and 16-hour workdays, he refused to meet with them and ordered them fired. The Pullman workers walked off the job May 11, 1894. As soon as the plant emptied, company representatives posted signs on all the gates saying, "The works are closed until further notice."
At the time of the strike, at least 35% of the Pullman workers were represented by the American Railway Union, or ARU. Although the ARU wasn't technically involved in the Pullman workers' decision to strike, union officials had been at the meeting at which the strike vote was taken. When the ARU gathered in Chicago in June for its first annual convention, the Pullman strike was an issue on the delegates' minds. The question was, how could the ARU help the workers? One plan was to refuse to hitch Pullman cars to trains and to unhitch ones that were already attached. Another option was to start a boycott. The ARU members would refuse to handle Pullman cars or any trains with Pullman cars until the railroads severed with tie to the Pullman Company. On June 22nd, the ARU passed a motion to initiate a boycott unless the Pullman Company agreed to submit the dispute to arbitration by June 26th. During the next few days, several committees were sent to the company in hope that the Pullman Company would submit the dispute to compromise, but were all turned down. On June 22nd, 5,000 workers left their jobs and 15 railroads were tied up. By the next day, 40,000 workers walked off their jobs. On the third day, the numbers of strikers rose to 100,000, and at least 20 lines were either tied up or completely stopped. By June 30th, 125,000 workers on 29 railroads quit work rather than handle Pullman cars. Debs liked how the boycott was going, but was very concerned of workers getting angry and getting violent. During the first week, he sent over 4,000 telegrams, hundreds every day, telling the ARU locals to stay calm and not to overreact. By early July, however, the federal government had already acted. In Washington, D.C., a majority of the president's cabinet supported Attorney General Richard Olney's demand that federal troops be sent to Chicago to end the reign of terror. On July 2nd, Olney obtained an injunction from Circuit Court judges Peter S. Grosscup and William A. Woods that prohibited ARU leaders from compelling or inducing any employees of the affected railroads to refuse or fail to perform any of their duties. A federal injunction having been issued, President Cleveland could now treat the strike and boycott as a federal issue, and he ordered the troops into Chicago on July 3rd. Debs first welcomed the troops, thinking that they would let the boycott proceed peacefully. But Debs soon found that the troops weren't peacekeepers. They were there to make sure the trains moved along the tracks. The strikers reacted with rage to the appearance of the troops. On July 4th, the strikers tipped rail cars and implanted barricades to prevent troops from reaching the yards. On July 6th, some 6,000 strikers destroyed hundreds of rail cars in South Chicago. By that time, there was some 6,000 federal and state troops and 3,100 deputy marshals in the city. Troops were recalled on July 20th. The Pullman Company, which reopened August 2nd, agreed to rehire the striking workers on the condition they would never join a union. By the time the strike ended, it cost the railroads millions of dollars and the strikers over $1 million of wages.
Probably wondering who Eugene Victor Debs is. Debs was born on November 5, 1855 in Terre Haute, Indiana. In his early days, Debs was into organization of labor by industry rather than by craft. He became the president of the New American Railway Union. Debs' union led a successful strike for higher wages against the Great Northern Railway in April 1894. Debs led the Pullman workers to leave their jobs and join the American Railway Union. When Debs saw that the strike was causing violence, he tried to stop it, but there was no use. When the injunction was released, Debs could no longer send telegrams to try to stop the violence. When the strike ended, Debs was arrested for leading the strike and causing violence and damage.